cool-headed, precise, a perfect weapon carved by Feldway's will. That was the image Zarario carried into the Labyrinth, an image he believed would never crack. He moved with the quiet confidence of an angel who had mastered his craft so thoroughly that even chaos bowed to his calculations. This mission was never meant to be glorious. It was a diversion, a distraction, a mechanical step in a flawless plan designed by beings who thought themselves absolute. And for a moment, Zarario believed that lie. He entered the twisting corridors expecting resistance so weak it would barely register. A few defenders, a few obstacles, nothing more than ripples on the surface of divine intent. But then the ripples became waves. Charys was the first, a warrior whose presence radiated defiance like heat from steel fresh out of the forge. And beside him stood Treyni, calm, ancient, elemental, carrying the quiet authority of dryads who had watched civilizations rise and fall. They weren't supposed to matter. They weren't supposed to stand. Yet Zarario found himself acknowledging them with a respect he didn't intend to give. You are both heroic warriors, but sadly, you do not pose a challenge to me. It was meant to sound merciful. It came out like a verdict. He struck. His distortion field swallowed their attacks, bending power as effortlessly as a finger tracing the edge of a blade. Treyni's spiritual force wavered, wilting like leaves under a merciless sun. Charys felt the weight of inevitability pressing on his shoulders. By any rational measure, the fight was already over. But rationality had no place in the Labyrinth. As long as we don't give up on victory, we will never lose. Charys said it with a reckless grin, the kind that makes even the strongest opponent pause. Not because of the words, but because of the conviction behind them. They were quoting Rimuru. They were echoing Veldora. They were speaking with the raw, stubborn faith of those who had found something worth protecting. And Zarario, perfect, disciplined Zarario, felt the first tremor in his composure. He offered mercy. They laughed at him. "Do you know what we call talk like that?" Treyni asked, her voice edged with mischief and certainty. "We call it a death flag." The Labyrinth itself seemed to breathe at those words. A cliché, yes. A joke, yes. But behind that joke was a truth, because their stand wasn't meant to win. It was meant to delay. It was a trap hidden inside a hopeless struggle, and Zarario realized too late that he'd stepped right into the center of it. The shadows stirred. Magic thickened. And then Adalmann emerged like an omen carved from bone and prophecy. The Gehenna Lord appeared with a presence so heavy the air trembled. Behind him walked Alberto, reborn as a Gehenna paladin, radiating the cold light of someone who had died once and come back stronger. And then Venti, the Gehenna dragon, her aura coiled like a divine curse, beautiful and terrifying. Every one of them carried power, flirting with the threshold of an awakened demon lord. For the first time, Zarario's breath hitched, just enough for him to feel it, just enough for reality to slip in a thin blade of doubt. He could still win. He was certain of that. But victory would demand everything. Everything, for a mission that no longer made sense. He braced himself regardless. Angels didn't retreat. Not without orders. Not without purpose. So be it. I'm gonna kill them all anyway. Let's show them what I've got. His words were ice. Conviction polished to perfection. But the Labyrinth had one more crack waiting for him. Adalmann smiled. A necromancer's smile. Soft, cruel, almost pitying. Then he spoke the words that turned Zarario's world inside out. "The foolish intruder has been eliminated by Lady Velgrynd. That's why I came here without a trace of concern in my mind." Cornu. Gone. Not defeated, annihilated. Burned out of existence by Velgrynd herself. It was a blow no angel's training could soften. And the implications spread like fire through dry glass. Cornu was dead. Dino was missing. Velgrynd had moved on her own, and the grand design Feldway had promised, stable, inevitable, divine, was unraveling thread by thread. But Zarario still clung to order because order was all he'd ever known. Feldway would adjust. Michael would guide them. The future was still theirs. It had to be. Then the final nail slid into place. A thought communication breezed through his mind, lazy and familiar. "Hey Zarario, you hearing this? The mission's a failure. Velgrynd got into the battle, Cornu's gone, and I'm out of here." Dino's voice. Relaxed, unbothered, a little amused at the disaster unfolding around them. The kind of tone that tells you the game is over before you've accepted it. That was when Zarario felt humiliation, not at defeat, but at the absurdity of it all. He, an angel of perfect precision, forced into retreat by a collection of monsters, undead, dryads, and warriors who should never have mattered. I've never been so humiliated, forced to retreat against this rabble I could knock over with a flick of my finger. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was something far worse, a fracture in identity. He vanished with his troops in a flare of cold resignation. The labyrinth fell silent. And elsewhere, the real guardians stirred. Zegion emerged from his fantastical world with the calm of a god waking from meditation. His power dimmed, but only the surface dimmed. The storm beneath was still there, coiled and ready. Beretta knelt beside Ramirez, who slept peacefully, blissfully unaware that two of the strongest beings in existence had just rewritten the fate of an entire battlefield for her sake. Lady Ramirez was merciful enough to allow Sir Dino to leave, Beretta said, adjusting the blanket around her like a butler attending a queen. Zegion nodded, his eyes unreadable. He had known from the beginning about the resurrection bracelet. He had known Dino could escape, but he chose not to interfere, because Ramirez had chosen mercy, because her will mattered more than the enemy's power. If Lady Ramirez wills it, I have no objection. His voice carried a warning beneath the respect, a warning to anyone who dared to tempt fate again. Mercy had been granted once.